We're going to have some group time and discussion. So we're going to be talking together and spending some time just talking about this content of leadership, some things the panel said, the things that Sean has presented with. But I want to dive a little bit into some of the concrete on the ground things when we're talking about these 500 leaders and how we're going to get there and where we're going to go and just answer some of those practical questions. So I'm going to throw up some slides here. So again, the big item we're going to get to is we're going to get to talk together. So if some of you just kind of glaze over just a little bit, that's okay. We'll come back and you'll be able to connect with some people. I'll try to go really quick. But we wanted to ask a couple questions about how leadership is doing here at the church now. We wanted to kind of get the reality of where we're at. So a couple questions we asked. We asked, how many leadership positions do we have currently? How many are there that are around us? And how many are filled and unfilled? And so we looked at that and we had a really great conversation. Paul Galley's been a part of with me. We call it the Goon Squad, where we just kind of doing some work, but we were to sit down with every single ministry, every ministry leader on staff, and just kind of get an idea of what's going on in their ministry. Who are the key people? What's the key ministry happening? Just so we can get an idea of what's happening in the church overall. One of the definitions we said, how do we define the leader? We defined it as a person, someone who's leading people toward one of two things, growth or achieving a task. Anyone who's leading people toward growth or achieving a task. So obviously any kind of group environment toward discipleship would be a leader. If you're a counselor, you'd be a leader. If you're teaching a class, you'd be a leader. If you're leading people to do something, like you're leading people on a mission trip, you would be a leader. If you're leading a team of greeters to have a good guest experience, you'd be a leader. The key is you're leading people, because that's what we're about. So that's how we defined what leader was. Here's what we found when we looked at what's going on in the church right now. There's a graph right here. You just want to look at the bottom right. That's how many leadership positions we have. 685 leadership positions currently. And these are either happening now or they're immediately needing to be happening in a greater way. 685 leadership positions. And they're broken down by the ministries in which they fall under. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of positions. That was my first takeaway when I saw that. These leadership positions are a mix of staff and volunteer. One of the things I get when I look at that is I think of, like, if you weren't sure that we're a volunteer-driven organization, to me that's the proof that we are a volunteer-driven organization. You cannot hire 685 leaders to come on staff and do the work that we're doing. That's why the Rays and the Ritas and every single one of you are so important. Whether you're staff or you're volunteer, we're all leaders doing this big mission together. So there's a lot of leadership going on. Next thing we wanted to look at was how many are filled and unfilled. And so we have 488 leadership positions that are currently filled by somebody right now at our church. That's pretty amazing. That's a lot of leadership happening. That's my takeaway. Unfilled, we had 197 positions that are currently unfilled. And these aren't long future vision positions. These are current immediate needs. Like, we could be doing something better right now if we had this person in us. So that's what we're looking at. So when we talk about leadership positions, and Sean says, hey, we need 500 leaders, these aren't leaders that are just going to float around because we just want to have them. There's urgent needs immediately that we can start putting them to work doing. A couple other questions we asked. We asked this, how many leaders do we currently have in our church? And how many are filling multiple roles? And you can tell I've been around the church for a little while because I know how leadership works, right? The mantra didn't come from nowhere that says 10% of the people are doing 90% of the work, right? So that's what happens, right? How many leadership positions did Ray and Rita have? They had a number in there, right there. So they're a case in point. So we wanted to know across the board of what's happening. Here's what we found. We have 298 leaders currently that are filling roles as identified by our staff. They're doing 488 roles at the church. Okay? 43 people are filling 3 or more leadership positions at that time. And then again, we're looking at this 197 positions filled. So when we're talking about doing these 685 leader positions, we're not meaning that leaders are going to start taking on more and more leadership positions so that we all have 3 or 4 and we kind of compare badges of honor. Say, I got 5 leadership positions. How many do you got? Oh, I only got 2. Well, you need to buck it up, Sonny. That's not the direction we're going when we're talking about leadership, okay? We really want to be much more strategic of saying, hey, we all want to be doing something very well. Kevin's a beautiful example of that. There's a guy fit in his role, in his gifting, and he's doing it well. So that's the way we all want to be going forward. So it's not just doing more. So the question is, as a leadership team, as a group of community, how are we going to fill these 197 leadership positions? That's the immediate question we need to ask going forward. So in your notes as you came in here, we gave you just a worksheet. And this is going to be the topic of our discussion. And it basically gives you 3 options. And I didn't mean that to try to box you in any way, but I wanted to focus our direction to say, okay, we're not just going to add on more responsibility personally. We're going to be selective on where we're going to lead so that we're making the most impact. So we identified 3 moves that any one of us in this room might choose so that each of us is kind of taking on a part of this leadership role. If the goal is 500, that's not just Sean doing 500 leadership development goals, nor Willie. That's all of us contributing. So how can I shoulder some of this load personally? So option A is to step up. The step up means that I'm not just going to do more, I'm going to lead leaders. I'm going to lead leaders. And so if I'm in a leadership role now, that means I go up a level so that I can lead more leaders, give them coaching, give them support, teach them how to do it, support them when they're going through a rough time. For some of us, we've never made that shift. And it's honestly, it feels for many of us, it's a big shift. Maybe a bigger shift than getting into leadership for the first time to say that I'm leading leaders. But for some of us, many of us in this room, we have the gifting and ability and the calling to do that. And so that might be the choice that we need to make. Option B is to multiply. I had an uncle that he was an engineer, and he was doing well in his role, and he loved working on projects. And then they promoted him where he was now managing all these project leaders. Well, that was the worst decision in the world for him to make because he's an engineer at heart. He's not a great manager. And so for him, he kind of had to come back and say, no, this is the way that I'm gifted to be in a leadership position. You might be in that position. You might say, you know what, I am an absolute gifted group leader, but I can't coach a bunch of group leaders, or I can't be a classroom teacher, an upfront speaker. And so you recognize that the role that you're in is your sweet spot. So your role isn't to do more, to promote up necessarily, it's just to multiply, to be more intentional about pulling someone in with you and saying, I can do this group, and I'm going to have you do that group, and that's going to be my win. When you can do this group with me, and I'll just keep multiplying and making leaders. Maybe that's the choice for you. Option C was to start. Some of us might be here and we've been a great helper. We love to jump in and assist. We love to offer a helping hand, work hard for somebody, but we don't ourselves want to take on that leadership role. Maybe like Dan talked about, I don't like the questions coming to me or to feel responsible to do that. Maybe that responsibility for you is to now to start to fill one of those roles. Maybe it's in the leader that you're already supporting now. Maybe you need to release them to go do something else and say, I got this group. I got this class. I got this ministry. I can do this for you so you can go do something else. Okay? Does that make sense? So again, it's not just us doing more and having all these leadership. It's being strategic and saying, God, how do you want me to embody leadership development as we move forward in the church? So a couple last slides, and then we're going to break into discussion. Here is just, if some people always ask, where's the greatest need? Well, here's the greatest need. The top 3 needs were group leaders in the Rio department, both the youngest ones and then the elementary, adult group leaders, and student group leaders. 64% of our leadership need is needed there. One of the things that's noticeable about those positions, those are all those discipleship-heavy positions. They're the ones that get in the trenches with people and say, I'm going to help you grow. That's where the greatest need is. And so collectively, I can say as a church, we all need more confidence and boldness to just tackle that challenge. So if you're asking the question, there it is. One more slide I wanted to talk about was we did some great brainstorming last January. Remember that? We had all the white sticky notes on there, and we had a lot of good feedback time about what's working, what do we need, what do we want to improve. Here are some of the results that we got from that. Number 1, above, it was clear. Everyone was just saying, hey, we need more training. More training. We need to be prolific at training. And so we're going to take that on as something serious that we need to tackle. That if we're talking leadership, we need to be training at a greater rate and more methods and more venues. And so that's going to be something we're going to be talking about. Number 2, what you guys wanted training for was all across the board. And it was just all you can say, it was everything. General leadership, ministry-specific leadership, just general discipleship. Everybody wanted something different. So we need to have a whole lot of things going on at one time. Number 3, how do you want to be trained? This was in a sort of priority order of the occurrences that we saw. On the job training, that's what you wanted the most of. Just give it to me what I need when I need it. A lot of you wanted one-on-one. That was a big deal. One-on-one training. Give me some personalized, customized to what I want. And then some audio-visual, video type training. So it's more on demand. I can do it on my free time and at home. that was the top of what we were looking at. So we're going to take that seriously and make that a part of our training programs going forward here. If you're in a community group, we started working on a couple of pilots and demos that we're going to launch to community group leaders to help get that apprenticeship going within them. And so you'll be able to see some things that we're looking at and give some feedback on how that's working. I think I missed one. Oh, lastly, clear vision or goals and organization. And that really comes down to how we train. You can't train if you don't know what you're going to train on. So as we clarify training, those are becoming more clear too. How we do things and how do we do things well. Okay? Next slide, and this is the last one we'll talk about, but this idea of that one-on-one training, because that's important. I think it reveals one of the great needs of our church to move us. You think that vision of 30,000 people on our campus and this congregation ballooning. When you think of the opportunity of growth, one of the positions that we need to look at is this coaching position, because one of the realities is that every single leader wants that one-on-one coaching and mentoring to be better. You guys said it, I've said it, we all want that. So the question for our church is, who's going to do it? Here's one of the stats when we look at that. We have right now 20 full-time equivalent employees on staff. That means our current budget, which is very healthy and balanced, we can afford 20 full-time staff positions, okay? If they're the ones that are going to do the coaching for the 685 leadership positions, each one is going to need to coach 30 leaders. That's all of them. That means that's the accountants. That's the administrative assistants. That's the landscapers. That's everybody. So I wanted to ask you the practicality of that actually being possible. So this desire everyone has of one-on-one coaching and mentoring of our leadership, where is that going to come from? If our default is, the staff are going to do it, I got to tell you the numbers don't work out, and they're not going to work out. So what that means is that for some of us in this room, the opportunity is that we get to step into those needed roles to say, I am a leader. I can mentor leaders, and I'm going to become more comfortable in that, and we learn how we do it going on. So that's one of the coaching roles, and that's in there. In your packet, and then you're going to do some discussion as a group. I gave you a list out of all those leadership positions, just so you don't think we're just making up numbers and throwing them on a slide. You listed all the ones that are there, and so you can look at them by order of need, or you can look at them by department. And so I encourage you to kind of browse through there and just do it prayerfully and say, God, where do you want me to fit in this role? Okay, so that's there for your discussion. In your groups, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the last page, and it should be more of a cardstock page. And so if you got the notes but not the cardstock, just raise a hand and we'll get that to you. But we're going to ask you to kind of do some prayer and really make a decision yourself about what option that you need to take. What is the Lord leading you to? And so we're going to make it part of our group discussion. So if you have your handouts and we're going to go to our groups, you can make that a part of your time there. And so we're going to break up in groups of 8 to 10 people. We'll leave it up to you. Leadership can take initiative and make decisions, all right? So we're not going to organize it too much. But 8 to 10 people, talk about, if you maybe look at those close around you, might be the easiest way to get going quickly. Circle up, and then we're going to have some questions come up on the board here. Let's just go through these together. First off, on this idea of opportunity. What opportunities do you see God opening up at River City Church to impact our community? That's that vision piece. This is why we do it. Where are the opportunities that you see? I bet you see some things. Number 2, what is God saying to you regarding your role for leadership development? If it's not totally flushed out, don't worry about it. Start with kind of where you think you are. What are your thoughts right now? Number 3, how can the group pray for you? What are the obstacles that you're facing regarding this whole leadership development piece? Where does that challenge you? If you're open enough, bold enough to share what that is, and as a group, you guys can pray together before you leave. So it's 7:43 right now. We're going to spend 17 minutes on that, and then we'll dismiss at 8 o'clock.